Welcome to Podcast for Fun. This is the show where we dive into the passion, the process, and the journeys of creative storytellers as they bring their stories to life. I'm your host, Sophia, and today we are joined by a talented writer and stunt performer friend, Paul Varacchi. Thank you so much for being here, Paul.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Sure. Okay. I actually have more than one career in stunts.
Mhm,
I was a chef for about 25 plus years. I mean, I technically never stopped being a chef.
mhm,
I was a professional chef before I got involved in stunts. I used to work in some of the Michelin star restaurants in the city. I used to work at the Spotted Pig. I worked for Mario Batali. And I was always doing martial arts, so that kind of carved the path out to me to get
mhm,
into stunts. And then I also you know teach Krav Maga, and I was did a whole big stint and just focusing my life on Krav Maga and being certified to teach that. And then
mhm.
all of that culmination decided, I made the decision to get into stunts. And I know
Mhm.
you had my friend Steve on here, and Steve is a big part of my stunt journey because we kind of started that journey together, and we're still on that journey. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's kind of weird when someone's like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I don't know where to start."
Or you're like, well, I'm a chef turned stunt performer, and you're like,
Yeah, I used to be Jimmy Buffett's personal chef. I used to live, I don't know if I, you're a little young. I'm not sure if you know who Jimmy Buffett is, but he used to sing a song called Cheeseburger in Paradise. He was very, very popular with the what you would call parrot heads, which is beach-going guys with beards that love to drink Corona
mhm.
and hang out and play the guitar and surf.
Well, that's a very specific type of crowd.
It really is. If you look up parrot heads and Jimmy Buffett fans, and you will be like, "Oh my God." Hawaiian shirts, very relaxed, everybody's happy,
Uh-huh.
which is a
Kind of
great
like
guy to work for also, by the way.
I'm kind of like imagining hippies for some reason in my
Not,
mind.
I wouldn't say hippies. Imagine like, okay, how about this? Think about hippies with money.
Oh, like,
Like they're not living out of their van
uh-huh.
on tour. They're going to a show because they can afford to,
Yeah, yeah,
apparently,
yeah.
in my opinion.
Okay, okay.
You know what I
So,
mean? They're usually older retired people.
mhm.
He was definitely, a bit of the older crowd. But yes, I would say that not really hippies. They definitely have their shit more together than I would say your stereotypical hippie.
I see. I was wondering, did you have like a
Sorry if I
like
swear, by the way.
what?
I said I'm sorry if I swear. Can I swear?
Oh yeah, it's totally fine.
Or
It's
should I
totally
watch
fine.
my? Okay, okay. I just want to make sure because
You're
I
as
gotta watch my.
relaxed as you want. I'll let you
Okay,
know.
great.
Also, like I'll edit it if you want to say something or like I had someone ask me like, "Oh, can you edit this part?" So I removed it too. So it's totally
Oh,
fine.
okay, cool.
So I was wondering, how did you get like was there a turning event or turning point that made you switch from a chef to a stunt performer?
So I mean, I guess I would say that the turning point was probably while I was working for Jimmy Buffett. I was also just starting into the production world. My first job was
Mhm.
working security on Marvel, content security. So
Mhm.
basically, I was in charge of making sure the actors were walked safely, to and from set, making sure they were wearing like their overcoats so nobody saw their costumes, walking
Oh.
around set at the end of the day, collecting everybody's scripts, collecting everybody's sides,
Mhm.
making sure kind of nothing got leaked. That was really my first job. And while I actually was 1 or 2 weeks into my first job, I consider this karma. I had a kind of a crazy incident, but basically ended up saving a guy's life on set. And then literally the next morning,
Mhm.
I got a call from a recruiter um, that does personal chef,
Mhm.
work, and she called me and she's like, "Hey, I got a job if you're looking for it." So I feel like it was like instant karma, you
Uh-huh.
know. And literally I went and left my production job that I just started. I was 2 weeks in,
Mhm.
and I went to go work for Jimmy Buffett for a while.
Oh my God, I need to
I moved
hear.
out to Sag Harbor, and I lived with him and his family in his house, and not in his house, across the street. I actually lived with his pilot and his son. Very nice guy. Um, so yeah, so I did that for quite a while, and then I came back to work. And
I
uh,
need to hear a little more about the saving a guy on set story.
oh boy, okay. So part of the reason that I got my job at Marvel
Hmm.
was my friend Pete Mounder was the head of security at the time, and he knew who I was through the Krav Maga world. So I was for a brief period in time, I was pretty prominent in the Krav Maga world. I was the first North American ever certified by Itay Gill, who is an ex-commander
Hmm.
of the counter-terror unit in Israel, also known as Yamam. So I was the first person he ever saw certified. So it was, for people who knew were in that world, it was kind of a big deal. So Pete knew who I was, and we were talking online, on
Hmm.
Facebook, and Iron Fist is one of my favorite Marvel characters. I have an Iron Fist tattoo. I have I love Iron Fist. And so he mentioned he was working on the first season of Iron Fist. And I was kind of half joking and kind of not half joking. And I was like, well, you got a job for me? I'm like, you run security. I'm like, hey. And he's like, and he laughed. He's like, I have a job, man. He's like, but it's not for you. And I looked at him and I'm like, dude, if it's on the Iron Fist show, I'm like, I'll take it.
Hmm.
So that was pretty much how I got into production.
Hmm.
Which was, he gave me a job working security on Iron Fist. And then through there I had kind of already started my stunt journey. Going to a workshop with Doug Crosby and talking with Steve. So part of the reason that I was talking to Pete is because he was involved with production, and I was trying to figure out how to get onto a production
Yeah.
to garner experience for when I did get a stunt job. I didn't want to walk onto a set and not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Being 37 years old and trying to get into a new career, you get to take a few points from your old career, which is learn as much as you can about what you're about to do before you do it. So for me, the smartest job was to become a PA.
Hmm.
Uh, and I ended up getting offered the security job because that's why I was talking to Pete. I'm like, how do I get onto set? What's the
Yeah.
best? How do I become a PA? Everyone's telling me that that's how you learn.
Hmm.
So yeah, the first thing I did when I realized stunts was what I wanted to do was um, get a job on set. Doesn't matter how low it is.
Hmm.
Uh, learn as much as you can. And it always helps. It doesn't matter if you want to be a camera guy. It doesn't matter if you want to be a writer.
Hmm. Yeah.
Learning how set works is a huge, huge mindset that you um, will have. You will be in an advantageous position if you walk onto a set for the first time
Hmm.
doing your job and you already have that taken care of.
Yes.
You know.
So what exactly is the job of a PA?
So the job, well, I've never been a PA, so I can't speak specifically as experience. I can
I
only
see.
speak to the PAs that I've worked for, and basically a PA is called a production assistant, and
I see.
they basically assist production. And you're like,
Okay.
well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Exactly what it sounds. PAs do anything and everything that will assist a production, from the most smallest detail to can you pick that up to do you have a car and send you on a mission? Like it can be a wide variety of things, but from the smallest to the greatest task, you need to be able to complete them with confidence.
Of course.
And I think the biggest advice I could give to anyone who's aspiring to be a PA or
Mhm.
come on set and is going to start somewhere, you need to be a problem solver. And being a PA, you get, there's an expression called shit rolls downhill.
Mhm.
Well, a PA, you're all the way at the bottom of the hill and you don't even have an umbrella. That's it. It's all fall that's it. You are at the bottom and you got nothing. So you need to find a way to start making your way up that hill and no one's going to help you.
So people just come up to the PA with like if they have a problem, like, oh,
Yep.
this is missing, can you go get it right now? And then they have to
Kind
go.
of. Well, basically they'll be like, yeah, okay. And then the PA will be like, okay. And then the PA needs to know who to call and a good PA will know who to call and how to start to handle getting that situation taken care of. He may
Yeah.
not be the reason, he may not have anything more to do with it than getting the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But getting the ball rolling is a huge, huge part to problem solving on set. And uh, um, one of the key things of being a PA teaches you is it teaches you not to dwell on a problem, but to solve a
Mhm.
problem.
Yes. Oh. But you were trying to get that job and you ended up skipping that part and becoming a stunt
No, I
performer.
wasn't. Look, I would say I was parallel to what a PA was. It was just I just had a title of security. I really didn't do much else. Um, Technically, they were more involved in what was going on in the shoot and the set that I was, but I had a lot more involvement with the actors and what was actually being done because it's important information that
Yeah.
kind of went through us and I was in the middle of. So, I was walking around the production studio. I was walking around the set. I was, looking, I wanted to be a stunt guy, so I was able to, meet the stunt crew and walk through stunt rehearsals, as I was doing my job and take in all of these separate things and all these things because as security, you're walking around everywhere. So
Yeah.
every department knows who you are. Every department sees you at the end of every night.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, you are kind of there. Um, just to make sure that nothing really gets left behind and information doesn't get out. I wouldn't say I'm really skipping over, uh, I wasn't any higher than a PA.
Okay.
They have like security PAs, right?
Uh-huh.
And those are the security teams that they bring in to like watch the lights that are going to be
Yeah.
somewhere in a place overnight, the highest, those will be security PAs. This was definitely a little bit different than that.
Okay.
Um, but I would say that Uh, I relied on PAs for information extensively, being in security. Uh,
Okay.
they were kind of my go-to. So I would never think of myself as better than them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like I never skipped them. It was just a different job.
Okay. Okay. You know, so you said you did being a chef for 20 years?
Yes. So I'm 46. I just turned 46. Yeah, 47. I'm not 47 yet.
Oh my God. So when did you start being a chef?
I got my first job in a kitchen at 15 years old.
Oh my God. Wow.
Um, yeah, so I grew up in Woodbury. I was yeah, I was in Woodbury, Connecticut, and I was about 15 years old. That's where I went to high school in Connecticut, and my stepfather's friend showed me how to make fettuccine Alfredo one night, and I think every day for like 2 weeks I made fettuccine Alfredo, but with like just different pasta. So my stepdad was like, "Oh my fucking God, I can't take it anymore," and he brought me to like a local restaurant.
Mhm.
And there was a woman chef there, and he was like, "Here." Basically, he's like, "Here you go." He's like, "He's gonna work. This kid's gonna work for you."
Mhm.
And I got my first job pitting olives and working literally next to the chef of this local restaurant in Woodbury. I forget what it's called. The name changed, and I drove by it a few weeks ago, and then I completely forgot what the original name was. Um, but yeah, so and then from there, I wanted to go to culinary school, and she said, "Listen," she goes, "Don't go to culinary school." She goes, "If you go to school, get your degree in business and get all of your experience cooking." So that way, when you open your own restaurant, because I have a feeling she got screwed over. She's like, when you open your own restaurant, you won't have to depend on anyone.
Hmm.
to run your books and cook your food. You can do it all yourself. So I went to school. I didn't go to culinary school. Well, I got into culinary school, but I went for business.
I see.
Yeah. And
I'm just
all my experience was cooking.
I'm just wondering because you said you did cooking and then you moved to stunts. So did
Mhm.
you just abandon being a chef? Like, was there a goal there or?
So, long story, very short. My stepfather was super abusive. So yeah. Whatever, blah blah blah. Shit happens. Um, I'm I'm okay. But when I was a chef, um, I fighting was not something that was new to me. And basically, I got into a fight outside of a restaurant called the Spotted Pig one night. There were a couple of guys who were not being so nice to somebody, and I decided to get involved. And so I got in a fight with three guys outside of my restaurant, and one of the waiters at the restaurant, his name was Joe Geralt, and if I'm not mistaken, he was an Army sniper, um, and he was home, and he was just, not working at the time, and he's a waiter at the restaurant, and he watched this all happen, and I was also pretty drunk, by the way, and it was pretty early in the morning. So then I went back inside and I was all riled up, and Joe calmed me down and he was like, you know, I know you're all riled up right now and whatever. He's like, but look, he goes, he goes, where do you live? And I told him where I lived. And he goes, okay. He goes, if you jog home with me tonight, basically like if you run, and I was in the West Village, in the city, and it was probably, I didn't realize at the time that what I was agreeing to, I was agreeing to run basically 4.5 miles to my home without stopping with an Army sniper. And the deal was if I ran to my house without stopping, he would take me somewhere that would teach me how to fight properly.
Oh wow, that sounds like a movie.
Right. So I was like, okay, sure, why not? So I ran 4.5 miles, never running 4.5 miles in my life. And every time I was going to stop, no joke. I mean, Joe just screamed. First of all, he ran backwards the whole way, ran backwards. And
Oh.
I'm winded running forwards. And he's
Uh-huh.
running backwards, laughing and yelling at me. And he would not let me stop. He would not let me stop. And I didn't stop.
Uh-huh.
By the time I got home, he looks at me and he goes, okay, he goes, when you feel he goes, when you can feel your legs again, he goes, you let me know and I'll take you somewhere to teach you how to train to fight.
Uh-huh.
And so that basically 2 weeks later, after I was able to bend my legs again, um, Joe took me to this gym. At the time, it was called the Fight House, and
Uh-huh.
I met a guy named Riley Bodycomb. He was my first coach, who was one of Steve's students at the time. So my relationship with Steve started very, very like almost 16, 17 years ago. Um, so then he he brought me in and then he put gloves on and whatever, and I actually sparred with Joe, the waiter who brought
Yeah.
me there. And Joe beat the shit out of me. Um, and I remember one time Joe hit me with a roundhouse kick, and then he hit me with a spinning heel kick in the face. And I took a knee and I put my hand in the air and I was like, nope, I need a minute because I didn't block any of it.
Uh-huh.
And then afterwards, uh, Riley came up to me and he goes, listen, man, he goes, you can't fight for shit. He goes, but he goes, you have really good poise when you're getting hit, basically meaning getting hit doesn't bother me.
Uh-huh.
Again, life of physical abuse will do that to you.
Yeah.
So, um, he was like, here's the deal. He's like, a lot of these guys need someone to spar with them because they're all training for different tournaments and different fights. He's like, I'll train you in whatever my fighter is going to do, but you have to be his sparring partner.
Okay.
So there was about 7 or 8 people on the fight team. It was in Remix Dojo,
Uh-huh.
and every tournament. So if there was a jujitsu tournament, I learned the rule set and I learned jujitsu or jujitsu. And if it was Muay Thai kickboxing, I learned the rule set and I learned how to spar and that was what I did. If it was Kyokushin, that was what I learned. That was what I did. And that was how I learned martial arts was being the sparring partner for whatever tournament and whatever fighter was going into.
So,
All in the while I was still cooking and working with Joe at the Spotted Pig. So this was all like during the day before I would go to work. So
damn.
I would wake up, I would go to work, I would, wake up in the morning,
Uh-huh.
around 9 or 10. I would go and I would train with them until about 1 or 2. I would go to work 3 or 4. I would leave work around 3:30 in the morning, get hammered, go to bed, do it all again.
Oh my God. That's so crazy.
Oh, to be
So
young.
now you know like so many ways to fight. I bet that made you so strong.
Well, I don't know about, I'm not, there's plenty of people out there stronger than me, but I would definitely say that I have my fight IQ is pretty high. I see things from so many different perspectives and so many, like, I don't look at it from one martial arts. I just look at it from what would work here.
Hmm.
I don't care where it comes from. So it's kind of great to have just such a wide and open-minded background and being like, nothing is better than the other. You're learning this because this guy's fighting in it.
Hmm.
So, you know what I mean? Like he was, if you're, it was such a weird thing because was learning a different martial arts with someone who wanted to be the best at it,
Hmm.
right? And then I would learn something else. And at that moment, that person wanted to be the best at in that tournament. So no one was really shit talking anything because it was just a fight team.
Yeah.
So we were all together. So it wasn't like this was better than that and this was better than this. And Riley was such an eclectic coach and he just loved everything. He was one of those guys that could do, physically, he was like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that. He would see it. And it was kind of like works equals works,
Hmm.
you know. Um, I guess the only thing that I never got into was like Kung Fu because that was something that was rooted in tradition and rooted in really, really um, the movements and a lot more than just being in a fight,
I
right?
see.
So I never got into, I would say, what I would call the more beautiful of the martial arts.
Mm. So you see Kung Fu as like kind of an art form, right?
Well, it's there are applications in Kung Fu, there are applications in Wing Chun. When I teach my striking class, I'm like, look, I was like, this is a basic, inside, you would see this in Wing Chun. This is where you would see this. I go, this is absolutely applicable in the real world. Every martial art has something that's applicable somewhere. So I wouldn't say it in a way of where it's just like Kung Fu's just for the fancy.
Mm.
What I'm saying is that there is a beautiful part of Kung Fu that I will never be able to take the time to learn properly.
Mm.
So it doesn't really see the purpose for me to learn it.
I see. So, but why did you eventually settle down to Krav Maga?
So the entire time, even while I was doing all of this stuff, the one thing that was always going through my head was, I guess I'm a practical person. I was like, look, if I put a guy into an arm bar,
Mm.
and this was back in, 2008. Like if I put someone in an armbar on the street, his friends are going to come up and step on my face because my hands are occupied.
Yeah.
I'm like, so a lot of this stuff works. I'm not saying that it won't work in certain situations, but if you train for certain situations and then you only know how to react to that situation, when certain things happen, it's they call it now fight or flight, but there's these firing, your brain fires to your body. And if you're
Mm.
not used to a situation, those signals aren't smooth. They
Yeah.
stutter, right? So if you're doing something that always works in the gym on the street, and then it doesn't work on the street, that smooth signal of something always working, those signals stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of fucked,
Yeah.
right? Because now you don't know how to think past that.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed something that taught me what was practical and how to think through not being successful, how to
Mm-hmm.
think through that what you do may not necessarily stop somebody, and you have to be able to assess that and keep going or
Yeah.
stop. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, understand what it really is to fight a guy with a weapon, not a real weapon, but I can talk about the box later.
Yeah.
But what it's like to take on a guy who's just trying to kill you and not trying to do something fancy,
Yeah. Yeah.
or the reality of like, what's the point of learning how to stick fight? What's the chances of me ever walking down the street with a fucking stick and then walking past another guy who's got a stick that now
Yeah.
wants to challenge me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a ridiculous. Just go through that scenario in your head in the real world. When will that ever happen?
Never.
Pretty rare, right? Pretty rare. So, um, I was watching The Human Weapon, a show that I believe was on National Geographic or the Discovery Channel or whatever, and they went all around the world and they did all the best martial arts from all around the world. Steve
Yeah.
was actually on the show. Um, yeah, Steve was actually on this episode. Not this episode, but
Yeah.
this series that I was watching, he was in the series of episodes. But
Okay.
the one I was watching was on Krav Maga, and they went to two places in this episode. They were at the IKMA
Mm-hmm.
in Israel, in Netanya, in the desert, and they also trained with Itay Gill, the man who certified me. Um, so while I was watching that, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is what I want to learn.
Mm.
This is this is what I want. This is all the stuff that makes sense to me. This is like, no, you're not. You're here, you're on the street. There are no rules. We're gonna teach you something without a rule set. And then, so basically I buckled down, I did my research and I reached out to people and I found someone who's connected to Itai, the person I saw and I trained with him for a few years and then um ended up going to uh Itai was coming over to America for the first time, so I ended up, making sure I was going to be part of that instructor's course. And I mean, this is a whole other story in itself.
Mm. Wait, what
Um,
exactly did you see
what did
on
I
TV?
see?
Yeah,
What
that
do you,
made you
oh, I mean, literally, it's just like, they go. So when I was watching this episode of The Human Weapon, you just see these guys taking guns, taking knives, but taking knives from someone who's like really stabbing, like not someone who's like holding a knife to your throat and just sitting there and being very passive. Like this was self-defense that worked against someone who was trying to hurt you,
Yeah.
right? So to me, that was what I needed to learn. That
Mm.
was the only because I knew to myself I was never going to be a fighter. I was never that guy.
Mm.
So I needed to learn something that was practical in my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got into Krav Maga. I do
So
see
then,
like
yeah. So then, sorry, go ahead.
so I was just gonna say like I do see I mean I'm assuming you got into a couple street fights if you knew when you're fighting you're like this is not gonna be practical, this is gonna be practical, right?
Yeah, for sure. And also I grew up in the city, so I've seen a lot of
Mm.
things. So a lot of it is, not necessarily my own mistakes, not that I was some type of a, drunken brawler, but just watching other people's mistakes,
Yeah.
thinking things would work
Hmm.
and, just being like that in your head, maybe, but, it's one of those where it's like, someone's like, "Oh, I would just do this," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I have a knife in my back pocket."
Yeah, I know a lot of people who actually carry around like the flip knife. Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, I don't, do I have it on me? No, it's on my hook, but I have a knife that I always carry on me and it has a little ring on it
Yeah,
and
yeah,
a little
yeah.
hook. So when I pull it out, it catches on the inside of my pants and it automatically opens, but it's not spring loaded, and the blade's only 2.5 inches, so I can never get in trouble for carrying it.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
But
it's
people ask, they're like, "Oh, what would you do for self-defense?
mhm,
Carry a knife?" And I was like, "No, I carry a knife because I use it at work. It just happens to be a cool weapon that you can use." But I was like, if you're gonna walk around the street uh, with a knife for self-defense, you better walk around with it in your hand
mhm,
because you're never going to be able to pull it out.
yeah, yeah,
Because if you're using it for self-defense, that means the fight's already happening. It's already
mhm,
been brought to you.
yeah,
Chances are there's going to be too many things going on for you to be able to think clearly to draw a knife and then do whatever it is you need to do to get yourself safety.
yeah.
Better for you to just know the fact that that's useless in there, leave it there and do what you need to do to get out of the situation.
You know, my dad is a jujitsu used to be a jujitsu fighter, and he was
Mhm.
telling me that whenever he fights, it kind of like boils down to kind of reflexes and instincts because you can't really think straight when you're fighting because your adrenaline's so high.
You can't. And then what's really funny is that afterwards, if you ask him afterwards, he'd be like, "Oh, when I think about it, I felt like I had so much time."
Hmm.
Like in
Hmm.
your head, it was just like, "Oh, I watched that punch come at my face." I literally was like, "Oh, there's a punch coming." Oh, boy, instead of telling myself it was coming, I should have moved. But
Yeah,
then afterwards, if you ever watch a video, you're like, "Oh my God, there was
no time.
thinking you actually had the time to say that." Afterwards, it's just like, okay, so it's weird the things that process, right?
Hmm.
So this is kind of weird. But so imagine that when you go back and you think about that,
Yeah.
and you can remember all of the things that you're going through while the punch is happening in your face, right? And you still get hit. But you're like, I saw it coming when I think about it, and I didn't do anything. A trained fighter, they move.
Hmm.
They don't think. They're thinking about what they're doing as they're already out of the way and where all of the openings are. So that's the difference between, I would say someone who's comfortable all the time and
Hmm.
fighting on the street when things don't go their way,
Hmm.
then if you would have someone who only knows one martial art and only trains in the gym and only trains with rules. When someone breaks those rules, that's it.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do anymore.
Hmm.
Krav Maga teaches you how to go through the breaking of the rules. It teaches you that nothing is ever going to happen the way you want it to, and you always have to continue.
I see.
But at the same time, there's the McDojo part of it, which just teaches you to mercilessly beat the shit out of people and isn't showing you the control of when to actually take the moment to run. For me, when you teach self-defense or whatever and you do weapons and knives, it's all about the knowing the instance of when you've created that moment to get away. And the second you decide to stay past that moment and engage, you are not defending yourself anymore, you're fighting.
Hmm.
So you have to understand if you want to be really good at self-defense or Krav Maga,
Yeah.
that when you've stopped defending yourself and got into a fight, most schools don't teach that. They just teach it all as self-defense, and there's no difference. But there's a point when defending yourself has turned into a fight if you haven't taken the opportunity to get out.
I think so I never really fought like to be honest because I told you my dad's a jujitsu fighter. He taught me jujitsu a little when I was younger, like in
Mhm,
high school. I mean, actually all throughout my life, even right now. And I do notice that when I like fight with my sister because she's my partner, right?
mhm,
Um, there's like an instance where I know I can like get out because like I'm like I think stuck in like a chokehold or
sure.
like she's on top of me and then I
Mhm,
get off and then I like go on top of her, right?
mhm.
And I feel like in that moment I can just run, like technically, if I was on the street.
Right.
And then I never thought about it, but I'm thinking of it right now because you're talking about it.
Mhm.
And I know, so I think like that's the moment where it actually feels like I'm the one on the offense.
Yeah, and in that moment, so those are the moments that when you need to know that you got to run. Like it comes to a point of where, is it now your safety or your ego?
Hmm. Yeah.
And some people when they come in. So I don't teach, it's weird. I actually do not teach self-defense.
Oh.
Um, and I have my to like if someone was like, "Hey, do you have self-defense classes?" My answer would be no. I
Mm,
don't. Because in my opinion, you cannot defend yourself if you do not know how to fight, right? This illusion of being able to eyes, throat, groin, this Krav Maga that you can come to a Krav Maga class and learn how to defend yourself
mm,
so you don't have to fight is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. If
mm,
you want to learn how to defend yourself, the first thing you need to do is go to a gym, any gym, a boxing gym, a jujitsu gym, a judo gym. I don't care what it is, a taekwondo gym, a karate gym,
mm,
anywhere where you will be training with other people who are worse than you and who are better than you,
mm.
and where you can actually understand what it is to compete physically
Yeah.
and have physical interaction with people in a rough fucking way.
Mm,
You have to be in that type of an environment for a very long time. Be very comfortable with getting hit, hitting people.
mm,
All of these things have got to be second nature to you. Then you can learn to defend yourself. Until then, everything that you're learning or you think you're learning is absolute bullshit. Because how
yeah.
are you ever going to be able to do it?
Exactly. Yeah. I was just gonna
If
say that.
if the instructor at your gym is letting you take him down and letting you put in a wrist lock or letting you break his choke with some weird, stupid pottery move, um, you know, you're not gonna when you go on the street and that doesn't work, you're just gonna shut down,
Hmm.
But when you go to a place of where, you know, you are physically capable of doing these things, and now someone can push you to an emotional state of where emotionally you start to freak out.
Yeah.
So another big thing is like if I was teaching a workshop, like I like to get, when I start walking around and I introduce myself to the class, I like to get in their space, like really in their space and just
Yeah.
kind of like and see how they react. And then I'll be like, look, if I was an attacker and I point them out, I'd be like, I would attack you, I would attack you, I would attack you, and I would attack you.
How
I
do you
was like,
know?
because just by the way that they react by me being in their space. I
Yeah.
can
Do
tell
you know
everything
why?
I need. It's yeah, and I'm like, so I was like, this is how they choose victims. I was like, they choose victims all based on, and I go, and you're in a safe place. I go, you're in
Mm,
a safe place right now. I go, no one's going to hurt you in this room, and you know that, but yet you still chose to be uncomfortable,
mm,
right? I was like, you could have stepped away from me. You could have laughed. You could have done a million and one things. I go, but you chose to sit there in front of 12 people and be uncomfortable.
mm,
I go, what do you think is going to happen when you have no one there and someone grabs you really quick?
mm,
Oh, you're done. I go, you're freaked out just by me doing that right in front of you. All of these little things that you let people know that, like, for me, I would rather wake you up and let you realize that you probably aren't going to be able to defend yourself if something happens. You need to just give it up.
mm.
Again, it's just kind of a scary thing when people are like, "Do you teach self-defense?" And I'm like, "No, because I'm going to teach you how to hurt yourself.
Mm.
I will teach a fighter how to defend himself on the
Yeah.
street."
Yeah.
Which, yes, self-defense, but it's different because he knows how to fight.
Mm,
So if you want to learn Krav Maga, you need to learn how to punch, kick, everything from the very beginning. If you don't know how to throw a basic jab, you can't do Krav Maga.
mm.
Like, how are you going to hit someone in the face if you don't know how to throw a basic jab? How are you going to know when the appropriate time is to go to their eyes if you're cowering because you're getting attacked?
So basically, be a fighter before you defend yourself, right?
Well, be a fighter so you can defend yourself.
Yes. Be a fighter so you can defend yourself.
And you can learn to defend yourself once you learn how to fight. Go learn how to fight anywhere.
I don't know anyone. Yeah, I don't know anyone who actually. This is such a new perspective for me. That's so interesting.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I know I'm not trying to, but have you ever kind of talked to anyone who basically focuses a lot of what they do on self-defense?
No,
Like this is really this is a passion of mine. This is really, really what I think about.
I can
Steve
tell.
is really, there's a reason I teach Sambo and I coach with Steve, and Steve lets me teach at his gym. We think very much alike, and even though Krav Maga has a lot of bullshit attached to it, one of the things that he realized immediately was that I was not about the bullshit. You
Hmm.
know, one of the things that working with Itay, it's very funny. When I went there again, I said I work with two organizations, the IKMA in Netanya, and then I worked with Itay. When I went and worked with the IKMA first, and they told me that I shouldn't train with Itay, that he was dangerous, that the things that he does is dangerous. But I don't think the things that he does is dangerous. I think what he does is battle tested and proven to be the most effective. It doesn't mean it's not dangerous.
Hmm.
But a lot of the things that I thought I saw at the IKMA that they did were done in tradition,
Hmm.
and maybe they really wouldn't work so well.
Hmm.
But also I can't take away the fact that, you know, they are the IKMA and Haim Gidon and Igal Arbriv and Noam Gidon, Haim Sun, they are the best.
Hmm.
They are the best. They are, if there's E-Tite, then there's these guys. And then I would say there's Nir Rahman and CT 707. If you're ever going to learn under an organization, these are the three you should look for. Um, you know,
How how did you're so passionate about, fighting? How did that like shift to? How did you realize that you wanted to be in film after all of this?
my whole life growing up, I mean, my actual father, not my piece of shit stepfather, but my
Huh.
dad and I, we bonded over movies. RoboCop was the first rated R movie I saw, and I
I
saw
love
it when I was
movies.
8 years old. And
Hmm.
my dad brought me to school late on a Monday to go see a matinee of RoboCop, and then he dropped me off to third grade at, like, 12:30.
Oh my God. At the
So
age of
I grew up watching movies with my dad, and my dad loved movies. He loved James Bond, and it was, movies was the way that I could always bond with my dad.
Hmm.
My parents were divorced, so, my brother was 10 years older than I was, so I was kind of the young one, but movies was it. Like when I would spend time with my dad, we would watch movies over and over and over again. Sometimes the same ones, sometimes different ones, but I would say that my passion for action and movies came from that.
I see, I see. So what kind of scripts do you write?
Um, I mean, so far I've written um I'm writing with Steve right now. We're writing a feature. And that is, I would say that is an action-based short.
Hmm.
Um, I've Most of the stuff that I've written is definitely action-based. I do have like a notebook of ideas. Those
Hmm.
are definitely not all action-based. I have a political thriller that I've literally been um, it's not ready for pen to go to paper yet because there's a
Yeah.
lot involved, and I'm still kind of mapping it out in my brain.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would say I kind of would write anything off of an idea, and it depends on where the idea ends up. Sometimes it ends up in action, sometimes it ends up here, sometimes it ends up there. Like the political thriller came from a very funny picture I took of a friend at a very wild night out, and I looked at him and I was like, "You need to run for office." And he's like, "Why?" And I gave him an excuse why, and I showed him the picture, and we all started laughing. But then ever since, and this was probably in 2010, and I was like, "Man, that would be a great premise for a movie."
Hmm.
And I've been percolating this idea for 14 years in my head, and I've run it by a couple of people. And the one comment, the best comment I got by a few people was,
Yeah.
Do not tell anyone this ever.
Why?
No, no, no. As in, like, don't give this away.
Oh, okay, okay,
Like,
because it's good.
they're like, shut up.
Mhm,
Don't tell people this. You need to keep this to yourself, and you need to like. They're like, this is good.
mhm.
So it's like, okay. So that's why I'm trying to be as vague as possible when I'm kind of,
I get it. Well,
yeah.
you should start making it before someone else thinks up of it. If it's a good idea, other people will also think of that good idea.
It's not the idea, it's the twists. It's the
Ooh,
twist. It's the you know what I mean? It's like it's kind of like put it this way, if you were to take Ocean's 11 but make it a political movie, there you go.
I see. Where does your inspiration typically come from?
For writing, music. Always from music. I'll always listen to be listening to a song and then I'll just kind of drift off in my head and picture something. A lot of the stuff that I've written, the ideas that I've come up with Steve has all come from music. And usually me listening to a music and then me envisioning what could possibly be happening to that music in my head
Mhm.
and going from there.
I feel like your life could be a movie, to be honest. Because I was so engaged the entire time. I was like, oh my God, you had a fight in the restaurant, and then some guy saw it and made you run 4 miles to your house. That's crazy.
Drunk.
Yeah, and then you went to the gym and you were like learning hundreds ways to fight. This could be, I was so entertained. You should make it a movie if you want to. I
I
think it's a
mean,
good.
I guess it'd just be a movie of a guy probably getting his ass kicked for an hour and a half.
Yeah, but a lot of people watch John Wick, and they enjoy that. So I wouldn't
I
they
mean,
enjoy
yeah,
it?
but John Wick was kicking everybody's ass for an hour and a half. I would be getting my ass kicked for an hour and a half.
True,
It was a
true.
lot. I mean, so I mean, I when I fir- so let's not make it sound like I was some type of physical fucking specimen, all right? When I first met Itai,
Uh-huh.
let me tell you this fucking story. When I first met Itai walks into the gym and I'm hitting the bag and I'm training on the bag and I'm
Uh-huh.
hitting it and I'm throwing knees and whatever, and he's watching me.
Uh-huh.
I get done and I introduce myself to him and he's like, "Oh, blah blah blah." He's like, "Oh, you're taking the instructor's course." And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Listen."
Mhm.
He's like, "I was just watching you hit the bag." And I was like, "Yeah." Okay. And he's like, "So I'm never going to certify you." Literally, within the first 3 sentences the man ever spoke to me, that was one of them.
Damn, he's harsh.
He goes, "I don't think I'm ever going to certify you after watching you hit the bag."
Uh-huh.
He's like, "So if you want," he goes, "I'll give you your money back right now and you don't have to take the class."
Mhm.
And I was basically like, "Go
Oh my God.
fuck yourself, buddy." I was like, I'll see you there. And within the first 10 minutes, so basically, I don't know if you can visualize this in your head, but imagine I'm throwing a straight punch and then somebody parries it out of the way and they go behind you and they scoop you in between your legs, right? So their hand comes up your crotch. So it's looking like this, right? And they grab the front of your belt and push your back down,
Oh my God.
right? So your legs go up and you're in your, yeah, right?
Mhm.
So that was what I do. And I spider out and my Achilles tendon snaps.
Oh.
Right? Itai goes, he puts me on it. He puts my leg on the chair, right? And he goes like this to my toe, and it wiggles just like that. Your foot, if you ever do that to your foot, hang your foot off the back of a chair and tap your toe, it won't move. It
Uh-huh.
won't, right? My whole foot jiggled. It just hung limp. And he looks at me and he goes, "Your ankle is done. What do you want to do?" And I looked at him and I went, this was 10 minutes and a 100-hour full contact training course. And the only other guy who was there his name is Paul Zakowski, who is a 3-time bare knuckle Kyokushin karate champion, heavyweight, right? This guy is harder than a coffin nail. And he was my sparring partner. He was my partner. And I looked at him and I was like, tape it up. So I had snapped my Achilles tendon, by the way. So I had him tape basically my ankle to my calf. I went through the entire week, 100 hours of full contact training in the morning, and then it was 4 hours of me teaching in the evening. Walked out with Itai, and he's like, "Look, man," he goes, "Obviously," he goes, "I still can't certify you." He's like,
Mhm.
"Because there were things I couldn't do because of your ankle." He's like, "I
Yeah.
pushed you through it." He's like, but there were, I can't." And I
Yeah.
was like, he's like, "But," he goes, "if you stick with James, the guy who I was training under," he goes, "stick with James for a year." And he goes, "And in a year," he goes, "I will certify you." Or
Mhm.
not in a year. He goes, "Just stick with James and I will certify you." And I was like, "Okay." So I literally got done with that conversation, went to the hospital, got surgery. Like literally went there, went to the, found out, yeah, and got surgery. Um, so then a year to the day, no joke, a year to the day, my phone rang and it was Itai. And he's like, "So here's the deal, man." He's like, "I've seen your videos. You've been sending me stuff, communication." He goes, "If you come to Israel and finish your training here, I will certify." He goes, "I'll give you your certificate." He goes, "I'll send it to you right now." He goes, "But you can't use it until you come back."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Okay, done." So, um, did that, went to Israel, and but my first 2 weeks there, I went to the to Netanya and I trained with the IKMA and those guys because again, they were one of the best, so I wanted to, and they beat the shit out of me. Before I went and trained with Itai, like in a good way, in a very, very, I love those guys. Like it was, but it was also I was a white guy, I was coming over there, so they were like, let's make sure this guy knows what Krav Maga is. So they beat the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
They literally, when I went there, I had to walk around Israel because I had black eyes, I had bruises. They they beat the fuck out of me. I had to walk around with a card because all these guys work with the army, they all work with the police and everything. And I had a card that literally was explaining why I was so fucked up. So the cops wouldn't harass me because they're very big, with the tourists, they're like, if you're a tourist and you have a black eye, like they won't fuck around. They'll be like, "Dude, what the fuck happened to you?" And they'll make you tell them. Like it's not, I don't know if it's a nice thing or kind of I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to show this card to a couple of cops. Because they're like, "Dude, what happened to you?" They're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
Mhm.
I'm like, "How?" And then they would laugh. And they're like, "You're crazy."
I would think you're crazy. Like, yeah, I'm doing this consensually. I am getting beat up to shreds every day.
So
No.
basically what I was going for was when I went there, I went and I trained underneath Teddy Stadium, the soccer stadium.
Mhm.
And that's where the counter-terror unit was training, and I was under there and I was training, and basically I was training to go into what's called the box. And while I was back here, I knew that in order for me to get certified, I was going to have to go in the box. So the box is basically an 8 by 8 um, room, right? And it's just plywood and it's built and it's got like, stilts coming off, holding up the walls, right? And you go in there and you have a rubber knife, small little chest pad, and a helmet. And then Itai brings in one of his counter-terror guys, padded to the nines, hands him a rubber knife, and then, tells him I said something about his mother and I want to do something to his fucking daughter and says, go get him. Right? So first time I go into the box like this is and I am not feeling very confident. And he says, go. And man, this guy stabbed me. I don't know how many times, I don't know how hard, and I don't know how fast. All I know is I was like I was dead. I was dead. Neck, head, chest, everywhere, all in probably 3 seconds. And I was back up against the wall. It was terrible. And then, and I thought I was doing, whatever. And then Itai just looks at me and he goes, dude, he goes, just go. He goes, just get him. And I looked at him and I'm like, what? And he's like, no rules, go. And I was like, okay. So he does it again. This time, outcome was a little bit differently. I charged this guy, wrapped up the knife, head butted, elbows, headbutt. Like I elbowed until my elbow was bleeding through the cage, throwing headbutts, and then they pulled me off him. Right. So then this guy, like, I'm outside the box and this guy says something to Itai in Hebrew. And and then Itai says something back and he kind of does like that. And then I hear a bunch of the other guys laugh. And now Itai has known me for a year now and knew I was already training for 2 years before that. But he also knows I was a chef.
Uh-huh.
So when this guy got out of the box that second time, he goes up to Itai and he goes, who the fuck is that guy? And Itai just goes, I don't know, man, some chef from America. Like pretend he didn't know who I was, that I just came there to just learn Krav Maga. And this guy was just like, what the fuck? And then that was basically, yeah, after that, that was how I officially got certified to teach. Um, and so that's kind of how I developed this, I don't know, weird passion for reality.
That's so crazy. You have to make this a movie. I'm not even kidding. This is interesting.
Someone else would have to write it. I'm not good about writing about myself.
Man, like if you wrote that whole like box the scene where you're in a box with a rubber knife fighting that guy.
I have it on video.
You have it on video?
I have it on video. Pretty sure, yeah. I
Is
gotta
it
go
on
back
you?
and look for it, but I'm pretty sure I have it on video.
Is
I don't know
it
if I have the box, but I know I have a lot of that training on video.
on YouTube?
No, it's in my yeah.
Darn.
I can send them to you when I find them though. I've
Please
got a few
do.
of them. Some of the videos are really crazy, like when they, like in certain Krav Maga, they'll show how do you like block when
Hmm.
someone's stabbing you with a knife and you'll wrap up. And literally they showed me going to block and we clashed and hit so hard that he actually hit my arm and his arm bounced off and it was impossible to wrap. So it was
Oh,
just these weird physical things that kind of make like traditional stuff hard, that when two people are really going at it, some things just don't work. So that was kind of the way things, that's the way, basically Itai's look, he goes, I'll teach anything if you prove to me it works. So sometimes I think of things and I'm like, hey, what about this? And he's like, send me a video, do it for real and send, pad up, do it for real, send me a video.
oh my God. Now
That's
Cobra Kai.
how he's never like, no, that wouldn't work. He's like, prove it to me.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have such a vivid imagination. I was just imagining the whole thing and it looks so
And Itai did a Krav Maga movie. I forget what it's called, but I can send you the title. But
yes.
he did do a little of his own. He did all of his own stunts. He did all of his own stuff. But yeah, it was like a I want to say a Eastern European, small film.
Hmm.
But Itai was doing his thing through most of it. So I'll reach out to him and you get the link and I can send it to you. But a lot of the stuff that you see in there is movie versions of what we actually do. Of
Can I ask one question? Like one
course, you can
last.
ask any question.
So, when you watch action movies, do you ever look at something and like, ah, this would never work in real life?
No, because why? Why? Does it pass through my head? Of
Mhm.
course. But would it ruin a movie for me? No. And people that it does, no offense, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. Like sometimes there was a scene in John Wick 1 or 2 when John Wick has the guy in a triangle hold and he shoots him in the head, right?
Mhm.
And Keanu Reeves on set when they were rehearsing went to Chad and was like, "Wouldn't I shoot myself in the foot?" And literally his response was, "Dude, it's a fucking movie." And that's the director in a rehearsal who could have changed it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then when you hear that story and then you go and now you see it, the scene when he could have shot himself in the foot, but then you think about that, he's like, "I don't fucking care." sometimes it's just nice to just be like, if we're doing so much of this other bullshit, like if that's the thing this is gonna ruin it for, then I don't know what to tell you, man.
Hmm.
Because he did 90 minutes of bullshit before he shot himself, didn't
Yeah,
shoot himself
yeah,
in the foot you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it could have been a million and one. Maybe the bullet hit the guy's skull and went out somewhere differently. Like you really want to get into it? No. Just
Hmm.
accept the fact that he didn't shoot himself in the foot because he's awesome and he's John Wick.
Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes, like even when we're shooting choreo, someone will ask, will be like, "Well, how come this didn't happen?" Be like, "Because it's a fucking movie."
Like it's already unrealistic, you know? Why are you so picky about this thing, right?
But but sometimes you are your entire movie is pretty good and based in reality, and then you've got this one thing that's absolutely ridiculous,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then it can pull people out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a a line that you have to make sure that you toe very carefully because but if you once you cross it, who cares? You
Yes.
jump in.
So, where can the people watching this find your work?
Find my work. I mean, Breakfall Studios, the New York Combat Sambo. Steve and I have videos up there. My IMDb page. You can check out my Instagram, Krav Maga Chef on Instagram. Um, Obviously, now we have the Film Fights with Friends podcast, Steve
Yep.
and I. So that's a huge, huge, road that Steve and I are going down together now.
Mhm.
Um, so I would say there, but I have coming up, I'm going to be there's going to be I almost gave it away. There's going to be a very, very big video game coming out soon, and I've been working on that for about 4 years.
Ooh.
So I can't tell you what that is until it's released. But I will be in The Walking Dead. I think it's Dead City, the one with Negan and Maggie,
Mhm.
season 2. So the final episode of that I'll be in. Um, and then otherwise, I would say yeah, IMDb, and yeah, I don't know where else you would find my stuff.
Well, that's more than enough to be honest. But yeah, everyone should watch the Film Fights with Friends podcast. I think it's
I
good.
would
And
say yeah. I mean, there you'll see, you'll get into a good more stories, especially at
yeah.
the final episode.
Mhm.
I would say if you went through this interview, you'll probably hear the Itay story again in the final episode.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And do you have any final advice you give to aspiring storytellers or people who want to become stuntmen like you who are watching this video right now?
Um, learn, I guess, learn every part of the industry. Just
Mhm.
because you don't do something doesn't mean you shouldn't know how it works. Learn as much as you can. I would say for a stuntman, um, find find a martial art, find parkour, something that you want to be good at and excel at that, and then just make sure you're not narrow-minded in the rest of your abilities. But I find you'll always, if you excel at one thing, it's very easy to be good at other things than trying to just be good at everything and not good at one thing.
Mhm.
So I would say for a stunt person, be as well-rounded as you can, but also make sure you have that one thing that when people need it, they know to call you.
Mhm. Yes. Focus on one thing at a time.
And just
That's
like any other job, if you want to get involved in production or in film in any way, and you don't even know what you want to do, start at the bottom, become a PA, learn the PA has his finger in everything. He knows all of it. He sees all of it. So I would say, just like if you know, most directors were PAs
Mhm.
at some point. Most chefs were dishwashers, you know. So, start at the bottom and learn your way to the top.
You're heard it here, folks, from the professional chef and stunt performer and an amazing fighter with like the coolest backstory ever. I feel like everyone's gonna lose when they try to
I
talk
wouldn't, I
about
wouldn't, I wouldn't call myself a fighter. There are people out there who fight for a living that are fighters.
I would call you a fighter after
Oh,
everything you heard. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Paul.
oh, thank you for having me. This is so awesome.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sure you enjoyed this as much as I did. And if you did enjoy it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with any fellow storytelling enthusiasts. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to explore, you can drop them in the comments or connect with me on any of my social medias. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and we'll see you on the next episode of Podcast for Fun.